have always heard music. I grew up around music. I remember my grandfather constantly whistling. But music was my outlet to express myself. Losing the opportunity of playing happened so fast. I wanted to not lose that window of opportunity for maybe doing a recording of some pieces that were important to me. No matter how long anybody lives, at some point, you just don't ask the number of days. It isn't worth it. It's much more important to live.
Hey! I'm so glad to see you. I'm glad to see you too, with all your stuff.
Well, I can't remember when I met Nancy, but the reason I think that Nancy and I kind of knew one another is that Nancy's an oboist. My father was an oboist. I think we were both delighted when Nancy came to Lexington because it changed the whole scenario of oboe, and she's a wonderful musician.
Who were you jumping rope with?
Well, when Nancy came to town, we tried to be welcoming and had her over to dinner and that sort of thing. And since I worked so closely with her, both in the orchestra and in my assignment here, and also as her mentor, we got to know each other and we became friends.
It was in August, getting close to the beginning of school, I think, and she really felt ill, very ill, and she said, I must have a flu or something. She said, I really don't feel well. So I asked her if she wanted me to take her to the urgent treatment. No, she'd take herself. I asked her again, would you like me to because she really was not Nancy. No, she could do it.
The urgent treatment center shipped me off to the hospital to have some further tests done because the lungs showed on x-ray that there was a lot of moisture. Peter was in the emergency room when I was first transferred to Central Baptist Hospital being sick. And I didn't expect for him to come to the hospital or to find me in the emergency room, but Peter being Peter and the one to say, I want to help, I want to support, he wanted to be there with me and find out what is going on.
When I got over to the emergency room, quite frankly, I wasn't imagining that this was anything terribly serious.
When the doctor had me run some tests and then came back and asked how long the kidneys hadn't been working, that was such a shock. That night when they put me in a room and started running more tests, and the nurse came in to take blood, and she lined up, I believe it was 17 vials. Just lined them up all around my bed and said, well, I'm sorry I'm going to be here a while, but I have to fill up all these vials. I thought, oh, this isn't something like a little cold. Perhaps the next morning, Dr. Eldridge came in and said, I think we believe that you have something called multiple myeloma. I've never heard of this before. And found out that it was a type of blood cancer. And I said, I can't have cancer.
Multiple myeloma is one of the diseases that fall under the category of blood-related cancers. There's no real known cause of multiple myeloma. It's bad luck, basically.
I thought, oh boy, this is a little bit more intense than what I bargained for. Between the doses of steroids with that and other drugs, I developed a rather significant tremor, and I had further complications in my lungs where I wouldn't have full lung capacity.
Myeloma is particularly associated with something called peripheral neuropathy, and that's a damage to normal nerve function, often in the hands or feet. It can affect people's balance and how they walk, or just how they function daily, holding a soda can and the can slips through and they don't even know that it happened. And someone like Nancy, that was a big deal, because if you use your hands, your fingers, to do your profession or to as your livelihood, that's immediately a concern.
So I realized in October that I was not going to be able to continue playing. So they were gracious enough to give me a temporary leave from the orchestra until I knew for sure if I could even come back to playing, which frankly, if they would have told me I couldn't come back, I still would have found a way. It's like if you're someone that's told they can't walk again, they say, well, yeah, I am. I think I can. I just really think I can. My dad was really into music. My mom too, for that matter. My dad played trumpet a little bit, and he would listen to big band swing music all the time. That's what we heard. And my brother, who was a couple years older than me, started out on my dad's trumpet. I started on oboe in 4th grade because they had a little presentation by the 5th grade band and said to the 4th graders, who wants to be in band, and let's show you all the instruments. That was really the best thing for me because of music being around. I wanted to participate in that noise making in the house. Well, I knew in junior high music was going to be my career. I mean, I played for, oh my gosh, since I was 9 years old. And I'm in my 50s, but I'm not going to say how much. And so I've played over 40 years. And it's a part of your life. You can't ever turn away from it. You can put it down for a while, but you can't ever get rid of it. You miss it. I miss it when I don't do it. My grandmother never drove. She was from that generation where women didn't drive. And she always said, you know, if you wait long enough, there's always a break. She was so cute. And she was right.
I remember being pretty shocked by it all. Leslie was kind of used to accompanying Nancy sometimes to doctor's appointments just to help translate, essentially.
She really said, Nancy, you're going to need a medical advocate. And she offered to go with me, which was incredibly kind. So I absolutely took her up on it. And she went with me to my initial discussion with Dr. Howard on what a stem cell transplant would entail.
I think the most disappointing thing is that when I talk to patients, I don't use the word cure. And I don't say that what I'm going to offer you is going to cure your disease, because right now there's no known cure for multiple myeloma. And the average person might be in remission for 2 to 3 years following the stem cell transplant.
So, just have a seat.
All right, thank you.
Back in just a minute.
Taking my shoes off.
It's okay.
I'm trying. Kilograms. Shh, you can't see this.
You're good. Come on over here.
I had done some emailing to various people and the Myeloma Institute in Arkansas, etc., and found out that UK, oddly enough, was one of the places doing stem cell transplant therapy. They had a part of Marquis Cancer Center that had a few doctors doing research on myeloma and were very familiar with the condition.
Multiple myeloma patients are managed by giving them high-dose chemotherapy and then following that by stem cell transplant. In the 1990s, people learned that you could actually get the stem cells to move out of the bone marrow and into the blood, and then we could collect them from the blood. And that's basically what a stem cell transplant is. And it's collected from the blood and then given back like a blood transfusion.
It's amazing to me how organized and thought out this is. Obviously, I knew immediately I was not the first patient to have done this. The transplant procedure involves a dosage of chemotherapy that suppresses some of your own natural stem cell production. And then they shoot you with a drug called Neupogen that stimulates the bone marrow to produce new stem cells. You go through a resting period, and then you go into harvesting.
We collect enough to offer them 1 or 2 transplants because this is really an area where we're emerging to try to define what's the optimal way to treat a patient with stem cell transplant.
The harvesting procedure the first time around got a little bit complicated. My heart rate started to accelerate for some reason. I didn't really necessarily feel like my heart was pounding out of my chest, but it alarmed the transplant doctors. They needed to stop my heart with a drug called adenosine and basically kill me for a few seconds to make my heart just stop. I remember saying to the cardiologist, please, no more waterboarding, because it felt like I was drowning. And I remember at the time going through all the panic of that. That was probably the worst night, the worst experience I had. I really had felt that night like that was going to be it, like my body just wasn't going to be able to go through this. I remember calling Leslie Simpson and Peter Simpson and saying, I think this is it. And that, I'm sure, is why they said, your body just needs some rest right now. You just need to go home and just do nothing for a couple of weeks. Look at this, he even dressed up.
You said look nice. And you said I didn't unless I dressed up.
I don't even count the number of students I've taught over the years. But I see all of them twice and sometimes 3 times a week. Yeah, see flat on the way down. And and these guys, how you can remember. Flat third going up, major scale, flat third. Coming down, you're gonna always have D flat, C flat. Flat 6, 7. I enjoy watching them very much develop their musical skills and their own personal skills as well. I think it's hard for me not to take them on as though they're my own personal children. They'll tell you things as a teacher that they wouldn't tell their parent. Sometimes they just need someone to listen.
Right. I'm so excited for them. What? He's gonna try and videotape it. Oh. He just showed me the ring. It's so pretty. Is it? Oh yeah, it's really pretty.
A very, very great musician named Bob Spring, who is a clarinetist, and he still teaches at Arizona State. I consider him my mentor, and he told me, Nancy, I think you need to get your doctorate and go teach in college. I really think that's what your calling is. And so I did. I quit the small little liberal arts college and went to Arizona State and finished almost all of my doctorate. And while I was there, I thought, before I graduate, I should probably see how marketable I am and just apply for some jobs. Well, I was offered and accepted a job at the University of Kentucky. Afterwards, I called the department chair and said, I'd like to come down to Lexington. I'm going to be there on such and such a date. And he said, let me set up a wind quintet rehearsal since that will be one of your job duties when you're here. I'm sure they'd love to do a reading. I love wind quintet. The bassoon and the oboe are the 2 double reed family members. So I gravitated, as soon as I came here naturally, to paying attention to who was playing bassoon. And I found it was Peter Simpson, and he was the most quiet member of the quintet.
We always have a mentor for any of the new faculty to sort of show them the ropes, and basically the main job is to help them through the whole pre-tenure process.
I found that I appreciated his innate musical sense a lot, and so I bounced off of his musicality easily and very quickly.
One of Nancy's great assets is that she's an extremely expressive player, which is very, very important for me. And it was gratifying and really fun to hear her play the audition, because I knew how expressively she could play, and to hear her go for those things was great. And at the same time, she nailed all the technical aspects as well.
So I came to UK very excited and had hoped that the tenure track position would continue on and I could apply and get that, which is what ultimately happened. So I moved to Lexington, and I remember my dad, who had been in meat marketing most of his life, but a misplaced cowboy in his life, He knew about Lexington and Louisville and loved Kentucky very much, and thought, oh, Nancy, you can be with around all these horses and everything. This is perfect.
Nancy called me one day and asked if she could live in my apartment. The only problem we had in the negotiation was she has Sammy, her cat, and I preferred not to have animals. It's not a big apartment, but you know, Nancy's kind of persuasive, and so she was sure Sammy'd be okay, and so we did it, and it worked out for 10 years. Quite well, I think.
So that's how I've stayed in Lexington for 13, going on 14 years now. It's been a long time. And in the interim between harvests, I remember that they told me I really need to be careful around dirt and that kind of thing. Well, I, in the meantime, had bought like 100 different types of bulbs, $100 worth of bulbs. I don't know what I was thinking. I wasn't, because it is spring. And I thought to myself, when they entered me in the hospital, I don't want to be here too long. I have these bulbs I need to get home to and plant. And I thought how appropriate it was that I was being transplanted in springtime to see what was going to bloom within my own body, as well as those bulbs I had to get home and plant. The days count down to the transplant day, and that day is your second birthday. And on that day, they bring you a birthday cake when they're giving you your stem cells back. And that was really special. That was a really special thing. I was only there for about 10 days, and I remember when the doctors, after about a week, said, wow, your blood's really recovering. It seems to have taken the transplant very well. And they said, you may not be in here much longer. And feeling like I just wanted to jump out of that bed and do the happy dance, because I'm so tired of being laid up. And I am a very big outside person. I want to be outside. And it's springtime in Kentucky. There's so few states that have more beautiful springtime than we do here. When the doctors came in and said, we're going to send you home, I really felt like it was a total gift, a spiritual gift in many, 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 many ways. Even though I didn't have necessarily a caregiver, I had so many great people coming around to help and check on me.
She would be so weak and get so cold that one time she just asked me to put a cover over her, which is frightening. You know, she could, another cover to put over her. Or she might need water, and you know, I would go in and get water. She was that ill. But on the whole, I just can't imagine anybody being more independent in that kind of situation than Nancy was. Whenever she felt she could do something, she would do it and test to see how strong she was, or if she could do it.
But I was dying to know if I could start playing again because of the ribs, the pneumonia I'd gone through, et cetera, and I still had a lot of the tremor left over from the high doses of prednisone. It exacerbated the tremor very, very much. So when I got home, that was one of the first things I did. I had a student giving his senior horn recital in May. That was on my calendar. And I remember thinking, if I can get home by such and such a date in April here, I can do that. I can still play. I had the actual transplant, I can't remember if it was the 7th or the 8th of April. And then, so I was home in time. I started playing on the 28th of April. And I remember that was so exciting for me because I knew that I could make that May recital. That was, I think, the 12th or 16th, somewhere around in there. And I'll split several pieces first. And then I'll start looking at these pieces to make sure they're flat and not twisted or warped. To me, this is the The joy of doing this, though, is it's so nice and quiet. When you make your living playing noise, sometimes you enjoy the peace and the quiet, too. 5 minutes, it should start making sound. Losing the opportunity of playing happened so fast, relatively speaking. I wanted to not lose that window of opportunity for maybe doing a recording of some pieces that were important to me. And as I started thinking about it, I would sit down at my computer and type in titles of pieces and surf on YouTube and start thinking about, well, what pieces would go with what? And I realized right next to my computer is a poem by Nancy Wood that's from her book called Sacred Fire. And it's a poem that's been very important to me. I thought I really need to try to bring hope and comfort to someone else that might be along on this journey. Things started falling right in place of this piece, and this piece. As soon as the focus was to be inspired by the thinking of the eternal peace and truly the ascent to the mountaintop that poem talks about and finding eternity. I said, this, boy, I'm getting emotional again. I thought this is exactly my goal. That is what I should be my aim. And I started looking at specific pieces, focusing towards that, things where I could find a lot of hope, because I am going to turn that corner, and I'm not afraid of it. I feel like I've already faced it once in some ways, but I want to make sure that I don't lose a window of opportunity that I have leading up to that by sleeping or being lazy. Parts of the poem describe going to the sacred mountains and discovering yourself through wildness and the beauty of nature. In this poem, it talks about finding eternity in a buttercup, something so small and maybe people would think insignificant, and finding eternity there hidden, in some ways, but that it's inevitable to find it there in the quietness. And I feel a lot of ways that's sort of my own journey. And as I've battled big battles, and the battles have tried to diminish me. So doing a CD, I feel the impetus right now to do it now. This is the right time. And I'm so grateful that there was the opportunity to do it through UK and a grant research project grant to fund it, because I would not be able to afford the musicians.
She asked me about playing this piece that's an arrangement that I'd done. One of the things that Nancy and I have done pretty frequently, both here and playing in other places, is arranging music for our instruments. Our instruments don't have an awful lot of literature. It's not like the violin or the piano or something. So I arranged 3 of them for our trio. And apparently Nancy wanted to include that, which I thought was really gratifying. So I was really pleased when she picked that piece in our group to be on the CD.
The people did it at an insanely reduced rate, and considering the number of hours they had to prepare to come and participate, I am truly indebted. The quality of their playing blows me away. But I think it really, truly taught me a good lesson of how fabulous your people around you are. I'm sure it's that way with any kind of tragedy that people experience, but I had it in a very, very touching, personal way. I don't take it for granted anymore. I learned that lesson very well. For me having played oboe for 45 some years now, plus having an instrument oftentimes allows me to communicate and express emotions and thoughts that words alone, of course, can't describe. You know, too, when you play, that very often what you're playing is going to outlive you. And in fact, that's your job, is to make sure that you pass it on to someone else and you play it in a way that inspires someone else to try to express it too.